next flower is going to be the purple coneflower. So it's going to look something like this. And let's see, the brush size that I'll be using is, I think I'll stick to number 6 so that I can get some of these petals. So they're not going to be super wide because I'm going to work on a smaller area. But you can use it, number 6 or number 8 will work as well. And before we get to the flower, I wanted to do a couple of just very kind of practice brush strokes. So let's see, I'm gonna use some magenta. So the purple coneflower, it looks, has more of a magenta purplish color to it. So just adding a touch of purple into the magenta and some common brush strokes that we'll be doing is just pressing down, maybe adding a slight curve and then lifting up. We're going to press down again and then lift up, and then for you can always round off the petals with your brush a little bit like this. Let's do a couple more. Let's see, can we actually, you know what, this is gonna be a much easier brush stroke this way. So we're gonna start, I'm gonna mix, let's see, again, I have some magenta here, and I'm going to press down and then lift off to a point and press down, lift off. So actually, you can do it both ways, but whichever way is more comfortable. So I think if you start pressing down really hard and then dragging it, and then you lift off, it makes a little bit more sense to have, your petals going to stem from here, and then, so we're basically going to paint them in this way, away from ourselves. You could do it this way too, except in this way you will start off with very little pressure, and then you would increase the pressure on the brush so that you get that wider area for the petal. So yeah, I actually encourage you to try both ways to see which one works best for you, because really it's about finding your groove with these brush marks and your hand movements, whatever feels more natural to you. And then let's see, for the leaves, let me switch to a green just for the sake of, since we're working on leaves. So the leaves are just going to be, I'm going to press down, lift up, and I do want this to be wider, so I'm going to repeat that brush stroke, press down, lift off. So now we have a nice little leaf shape, and then you have the stem can be slightly curved, and even the leaf can be slightly curved too. Press down, so you can even add a slight curve to just make it a little bit more organic. Okay, so we'll get started with our flower. I have a new sheet of paper. We're gonna start with the cone, so the center part of the flower, and I'm gonna grab a little bit of yellow ochre, which is like this sandy beach color, and I'm just going to basically sketch out half of an oval shape. So it's gonna look something like this, and then I'm going to connect these two lines with a slight curve, so not as pronounced as the one on the top. And I'm going to paint this in. Alright, and then I'm gonna grab a brown from my palette. So I'm just any brown that you have that's of a darker color will work here. And before this area dries, I'm just gonna, drop in some of this brown in here. And I could, help move it around, but I kind of like this effect where it's very kind of organic and natural. And another thing you could do is, if you clean off your brush too, and you dry it a little bit on the towel, you can come in and add a little highlight so that this gives this cone, this center part of the flower, a little bit more dimension. All right, we might have to, let's see, I have to reinforce this a few more times because there's a lot of kind of wet area, a lot of water here. So my highlight might disappear. Remember, you always want to clean off your brush, and then, so I have a little towel here that I use. So I'm cleaning off my brush, and then I'm lifting off, because otherwise we would be reintroducing that paint back into that area. All right, so next I'm gonna grab my magenta. Just gonna add more here. And see, I think I'm gonna do the method where I'm gonna press down first. So applying lots of pressure on my brush, and I'm dragging, and then I'm lifting off to a point like this. I grab a little bit more color, press down, and lift. Press down again and lift. And I kind of like that these the magenta is bleeding in a little bit into this area. You could, allow it to dry completely if you don't like this look, but I really like it because I think it just is part of that kind of unexpected watercolor magic that happens. So, and notice how I'm adding a curve as I'm going along. You don't have to do that, but I think it just, I'm kind of like imagining this as a flower out in the field, and some of these petals are slightly curved. Let's see, I'm gonna add one more here. Here we go. And actually, I'm gonna go back in with this magenta and going to add some lines kind of in the center of these petals, just to kind of give the impression of folds. And you also could do, if you clean off your brush, you could press down and lift off tiny highlights. So since my highlights are on the side of the paper on the left, I can lift these little bit of the watercolor from each of these petals, and that just gives it more dimension. As you notice, I had like kind of inconsistent brush cover or like color coverage on these petals, and if you're not a fan of that, you can always go back in and say like you want to fix it, so you just add more color here so that it's evenly distributed, and then you can lift off. I prefer these types of like unexpected, some areas are a little darker. That's just my personal preference, but I wanted to show you that it doesn't have to always be that way. So you could, if you're not a fan, you can always fix that. So as I'm doing here, I'm just adding more color to the opposite side of our highlight so that they all match. All right, so we're pretty much done here. I'm just gonna add the leaves. So I got a really nice green here on my palette, and it's kind of like a yellowish green. If you don't have this particular green, just add a touch of yellow into any green that you have to kind of warm it up a little bit. And then we're gonna so I'm gonna apply very little pressure for the stem, and then like we practiced, applying pressure down on the brush and then lifting off. Then I'm gonna do another one, same thing, just repeating it so that, And actually my highlight is on the other side. So let me cover this whole area. And then I'm going to clean off the brush and then go lift out the highlight so that it matches. So everything's on the left side. A quick little note here. So say that this happened by accident and you just absolutely don't like it. You can always fix this. So I'm going to clean off my brush and I am just going to basically paint or kind of go in circles in this area where I am like kind of basically removing some of that magenta that bled into this cone part of the flower. And you'll notice that it is picking up the layer of the brown and the yellow ochre that I had, and that's okay. I can go back in with some yellow ochre, and now the pink won't bleed in because these petals have already dried. So I can go back in and kind of just fix it. And I wanted to show you this, in case you come across the situation when you're painting something and you're frustrated that, oh, like my colors are bleeding into each other and I didn't want to, or, my painting is ruined. Like, it's not ruined. You can always, with watercolors, like lift off and then kind of reintroduce or paint over your color. And actually, a cool technique that I like here is, if you do the little kind of speckled dots here with the darker brown, it can create a little bit more texture on that cone. So then it looks more kind of like a little bit more realistic, gives it a little bit more dimension.